Welcome to your Sprinkle with Hope podcast. The purpose of our podcast is to spread hope, light, and love. It is important for us to be engaged in this work so we can help motivate, uplift, and inspire you. Whether it is listening to us or hearing one of our amazing guests, our hope is that what you hear encourages you, strengthens you, and helps you discover additional tools to create a better life for yourself. Share this with family and friends, leave us a review or rating, and know that each small action you take to spread this message is appreciated. Subscribe to our podcast or YouTube channel so you don't miss anything.
Welcome to the Sprinkled with Hope podcast.
This is Jason. And this is Shane.
And it's podcast time.
Welcome back to Sprinkle with Hope podcast and your host, Shane. Today, our guest is Mary Beth Robinson. For 20 years, she's been working with people across the globe to discover their superpowers. She's committed to helping people live their true potential. I loved that. She says, there's such great joy and inspiration present when we're expressing our genius. She's also a chiropractor who specializes in emotional release techniques and holistic healing. Mary Beth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we were just chatting for just a second. I can vouch that she's actually never talked to us in person. She did a little write-up for me and I was reading it and thought, wow, this is spot on. We've actually hadn't talked before that. And so Mary Beth, if I can ask you to do the same thing to Jason. And again, she has no idea who Jason is, and she's going to tell everybody a little bit about Jason.
Okay. So it's so interesting because I was tuning in, Jason, with you this morning, and you all are brothers, right?
We are.
Okay. I mean, I figured Baller is not the most common last name. But okay. So Shane, do you mind if I say a little bit about you because I will tie it in at the end, because it was frankly pretty fascinating to do readings for both of you as brothers. So Jason, you see life through, okay, let me back up. When people say, gosh, this person is an artist, they're usually thinking like they're a painter, a sculptor, or a dancer, or a singer, or something like that. I don't know what you do. I don't know anything about you, but you are not only an artist, but you live in an artist's world. That's the way you think about things. Like where Shane is like, okay, let's do this, and I can see this. You are all like, oh, and here's the magical part of this. And this is it's so interesting. And I love that. I mean, I have two sisters, and if there could be three opposites, we would be those opposites. So it's really fascinating. And so, Jason, you see things, you are very comfortable in the emotional, energetic part of life. Now, you are really good at the concrete stuff, but it's not where you get your joy.
So true.
Yeah. So you are like, so when I say you're an artist, you think like an artist. You see these abstract things and you see it in such a beautiful way. And you pick that out where other people would be like, oh, that's a nice scene. And you'll be thinking, gosh, I really feel, just for an example, I feel the artists like, need to break free, that's what you are. And the thing that I would say about you is, don't discount that part of you, because that's where you have so much to add to everyone because of the way you see life. And I have a feeling that you try to be that, let's do this linearly, and it does not work for you.
No, it doesn't.
You can do it. You're good at it. But if you get too into that and too structured, it just sucks the life out of you, and it makes you sad.
This is very true.
I was going to say, I think the giggling is like
It's
like a
it's spot on.
recognition.
So the reason I think why Jason and I are laughing, because we were again talking a little bit before Mary Beth came on about the write-up that she had done for me. And I was like, Jason, this is spot on. It's so fascinating to read something from somebody I've actually never talked to before, but it was describing me in my mind, the person I am. I was reading that. So it was so fascinating. I wanted to start with that because, Mary Beth talks about superpowers and that potential that we all have. And I just thought that was fascinating to hear her describe Jason, because I know him, he's my brother. And I would say you were exactly on with who he is. And again, we've never talked to Mary Beth. This is the first time we've talked to her, and she's actually never interacted with Jason up until about 6 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So fascinating stuff. So Mary Beth, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you got into this? Maybe a little bit more about what a superpower is and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear anyone's journey, because we're all walking around like with this incredible like pack of gold on our backs, and we don't see it. We're just like and everyone has it. So I grew up thinking I need to be accomplished, I need to handle this, and I have a degree in math. I'm like, like everyone thought I was going to be an engineer. But I just could tune into people at a very young age. And I basically, when I was really young, I would say, is this person safe or not? Do I feel safe with them? And that's kind of how it all started. And it's just, it's so me that when people say, how do you do that? I'm like, how do you not do that?
Yeah.
Kind of in it, but not in a conceited way. Like when I see people who are amazing, like the tattoo artists, people come in and they're like, would you draw a picture of my mom? And then they do it. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Like,
Yeah.
and their response would be the same. They're like, you just do it. And so over the years, I'm 52 now. It's 2002, just in case anyone's trying to do the math. I was born in 1970. You don't have to be, you have to put it all together.
Love it.
So good.
But so it's taken a long time, because there's no school for what do you do? There probably are, but I haven't been to one that is like, let's really delve into what you're great at and let's figure it out. So over the years and through chiropractic, I got to work with a lot of people intuitively. And then I realized, as much as I love chiropractic, and it's such a great thing to do, and I still get adjusted, but at some point I realized I don't want to work with people's bodies. It's just, it's a 90% fit, but it's not 100% fit.
Yeah.
What's 100% fit is to do exactly what I've done with you two, is just to bring out, put on the table, like, here's what you're great at, pull out the great nuggets and put them right here so that you can see them. Because nothing I said was a surprise, was it?
No, not at all, actually.
No.
Right, exactly. Like, we all know that that's who we are, but it kind of, if this is your conscious level, it kind of lurks under here. And on occasion it comes up and then it kind of goes back down, especially with you, Jason, like that moment when you really get to express and live in that artist's mindset. It's like, I love this, like, this is my playground, like, this is super fun. And so we've all got it. And it just, and I love the idea of helping people see that incredible, great part of them so that they can consciously develop it. Now, and then there's the flip side of this. The flip side of this is that invariably people who have any kind of talent, like Shane, you are so like, I see this, we're going to do it, like all action, it's just great. You're like, you've literally organized it in your brain before you even think about it. You're
Amen.
like, yep, there we go.
So true.
Yeah. Like that's the way it works for you. And you're like, let's go do it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's so clear. Let's move along. And you don't, I mean, but what's so we do it automatically, but we expect ourselves to be different. Like Jason, you may expect yourself to be really, really organized and just super regimented. And Shane, for you, I think sometimes you feel like you should be, you have such clarity and you can see things and other people can't sometimes because you're just like, oh, look, here we go. Here's the vision. Let's do it. And you're already like 100 miles, 1,000 miles down the road before anyone is like, wait, what just happened? And so sometimes I think you feel like you can't relate to people and you can't really say you can't really just go for it because people can't really get it because you're so fast. So you might think, okay, I've got to be different so that people understand me. Instead of, does that make sense, Shane?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. So you will like, so whereas Jason might feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to be more like an engineer in my life, and everything's got to be, this. And you can't just say, listen, sometimes I'm just out in the ether. I am living out here and I'm going to be doing this for a while. You know what I mean? Like, that's not something that you would do. You'd be like, no, I'm responsible. I am. But, part of your being responsible, Jason, is taking the time to live out in the ether because amazing things happen. And for you, Shane, you do not have to dumb yourself down because people can't go as fast as you.
Okay.
So
Good feedback.
yeah, you know what? Because there is, as much as we want to be ourselves and be really true to ourselves, there's the opposite side of the coin where we're like, for some reason, we're like, but I can't be that way. I really can't be that way. It either doesn't work for other people or it's irresponsible. I mean, for me, I grew up the third kid and my sisters called me the princess because by the time I came along, my parents were kind of like, you can raise yourself. You know what I mean? Like, do whatever. It's fine. As long as you stay alive, you're good. Whereas with my older two sisters, they were much more strict and they didn't get away with anything. And as long as I kept myself fed and alive, my parents were like, sounds good. So I had a lot of advantages that they didn't have. And they were a little bit like, that's not fair. And so they called me the princess. And I grew up being like, I'm not a princess. I work hard for what I get. And and so I overcompensated by like trying to look really responsible. And you know what? I mean, would you really honestly rather have me be super responsible or me to do what I do?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Right.
I think that the same thing would be true. I totally get what you're saying. Because oftentimes we put ourselves in this box of saying, okay, I've got to be, I can't be creative. I can't be this mind that these things that I want to do. Right. Like I want to go out and just throw paint and splatter it everywhere and just see what happens. And
Totally.
right. And just be who I am.
Yeah.
But like, sometimes I feel like I can't do that because I'm supposed to be this all put together, know exactly what I'm supposed to do, organized in such a way. And I don't particularly care for that, right? Like I want to have that. And I just want to be who I am and not put myself in a box.
Exactly. And it's so easy. We don't even realize we're doing it. We have these expectations. And, Jason, exactly. I saw you like when I first tuned into you, in this garden in my hometown. And you were like literally in your brain, you were like drawing in the air, like you were.
So me.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And that's, because you're not only artistic, but you just live as an artist. And you know what? I mean, I had this great conversation one time with this woman, and my other nickname growing up was Mess. So one of my sisters named me Mess because I was
Oh, that's funny.
this like untethered kind of like kid. I was a late bloomer. Like I just was all over the place. And so she called me Mess because we had to share a room. And I was a mess. And then, so I was talking to this woman, it was like 2 weeks ago. And I loved it because, even though this is what I do, I miss things too. And I said, I just feel like such a mess. And she said, no one cares if you're a mess. They care if you can deliver the goods doing what you do.
Right.
And I'm all, what? No one cares. And, it was just amazing because it's not like I live my life like a mess, but,
Sure.
I just feel like a mess sometimes. And I'm like all over the place and the dots don't, connect all the time. And it was so freeing just to be like, great, I'm a mess. Great. I can just, I can just, and like, Shane, with you could be like, yeah, I know. I go like a million miles an hour. I'm like the Flash. That's your new call sign. I
love it.
I just watched Top Gun like 2 nights ago. So we were talking about call signs. So you're the Flash. You're Flash.
Yeah. Love Top Gun. I've seen it twice already. And
and it got us talking because my husband is retired Air Force. And we were talking about all the hilarious and horrible sometimes call signs that people get.
Right.
Yeah.
But like fanboy and Bob was the best. Right?
So little did I know when we started this podcast that you, Mary Beth, would be giving our listeners more insight into Jason and I, and really like in a good way, exposing us to our listeners, which we're really focusing more on that. Our last few episodes, we've really shared some personal experiences that might be hard to even talk about. And so I'm really grateful that you're giving our listeners a little bit more insight into who we truly are. So my question for you is, people might be listening to this and saying, okay, this is Mary Beth's superpower. She can really tap into people and read them right off the bat without really knowing anything about them. But how do Jason and I, and how do our listeners, how do we find our superpower? Is that something we can do personally, or do we have to reach out to people like Mary Beth? Or
you know what? Here's the way I think about it. Nobody has to talk to me, like, because doesn't that sound so exclusive? Like that just is not, we are all we all know who we are. Because when I did both of the readings for you, you were like, oh yeah, that's exactly who I am. Like it wasn't a surprise.
Right.
So, so here's what I would say after having gone through this myself, because I had to go through this process myself and figure it out and play with it and work with it for decades. So, we have tools. So really quickly, there's your superpower and then there are your tools. Tools are what you're really, really great at, and they can be used in service of your superpower, but they are not your superpower. Like I am actually great at organizing. I'm great at clearing out. I'm great at, figuring things out. I can put anything together as long as I have a picture. You know what I mean? Like my sisters are like, would you put this together for me? And I'm like, sure. Do you have a picture? Because then I'll do it. But that's not my superpower. My superpower is seeing, really the divine nature in all of us and explaining it in a way that they can get it. It would be no good for anybody if I was if I couldn't explain it, if I couldn't, make people feel comfortable, make them feel safe, and explain it in a way that makes a difference. So that's me. And you know what? My superpower isn't any more extraordinary than anyone else's. It's just mine. For
Right.
me, people who draw, mind-boggling. Can't
Right.
even believe that they do that, but that's great. I mean, that's their thing. So what I would say is, so several, like, oh gosh, many years ago, 20 years ago, I knew I was a good speaker, and I was a good writer, and I'm a good coach. And then I thought, well, which one should I go for? And I realized that if I couldn't tune in with people and express what I get, the other three would not matter.
Mm,
Like some people who are writers, they are all about writing, and it's all about the writing. Nope. I am a writer, but I'm not like that. And some people who are speaking, they study it, they practice it, not me either, and I realized that that's the one thing I wouldn't give up is my ability to tune in and talk to people about what I got to make it in order to make a difference. That was the one thing I would not give up. So that's how I would start is what's the one thing I wouldn't give up? What's the one thing that is so me? Like I am in a writing group with people who write. They are bananas about writing. They're always reading, which is fabulous. And they're so enlivened by it. And I'm like, I love to write, but I only love to write because I tune in and I kind of channel things. That's
yeah.
how I write. I don't want to study writing. I don't want to do all that stuff because that's not really me. The tuning in is where the magic happens for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Like,
And one of the questions I had was, so, okay, people may find what their superpower is, right?
yeah,
And they may, okay, this is my superpower, the creative mind, like what the way you
yes,
explain me. Um,
yeah.
but what tends to hold us back from really utilizing that superpower and moving forward? Because I think oftentimes that's what it is, right? Like, okay, cool, I'm creative, but now what
Right
do
now,
I
what? Right,
what do I do with
right.
that? And how do I be myself and not put myself in that box?
Exactly. And Jason, that's like the $1,000,000 question
Right.
because it's a great question. And it's so powerful to do that because once you start to, and this process, it is a process. It's like, like with the two of you, I was able to go right in and be like, okay. And you all are so open and so wonderful that it's easy to do. Like it was just like, bam, here's Shane, there's Jason. Jason's in a garden doing this, and Shane is like, zing, I don't know where he is because he's already way far in advance.
Cool.
So it's but that's like kind of a shortcut because we've put it out there and now we're talking about it, and now you two who are working together on this project and as brothers are like, oh, I'm more clear about this now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so one thing is I would say, have this conversation, as people are going through this process, share this information that you're getting with somebody who's earned the right to hear it. And I took that
Mm,
right from Brene Brown. She's like, when you're feeling vulnerable, share it with someone who's done the work and earned the right to hear it. You don't want to share it with necessarily everyone. Now, that's not to
right.
say to be closed, but when you're feeling vulnerable and you're really sorting things out, talk to somebody who you really trust, who's just going to listen to you and say, you know what, I do see that in you, and I would love to have you do that. And what would that look like? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally.
Instead of somebody who's like, yeah, but you still got to pay the bills. Okay, right. That.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
super helpful. Um, so, like for you, Jason, let's just take you for a second. Um, it's okay. You're gonna handle your life no matter what. Don't worry about that. You're going to do those things that you need to do, but you need an outlet. And all of us do. Shane, you as well. Like if you don't have like a project that's like out of this world, then Flash is not going to be happy.
I love that.
You all are now dubbed Flash and Dreamer. Okay. So
I love it.
Spot on.
So good.
Spot
by
on.
the way, my call sign is Napper. I can nap anytime, anywhere, because my brain is like, it's always doing this stuff. And I'm all, you know, I got to like, that's where I do all my processing. So I am Napper.
Yeah.
We talked about this on the way home from the movie. It was so funny. Okay. What's
good.
everyone's call sign?
Yeah. Great discussion from Napper and Flash and Dreamer. This is great.
That's right. Right. It's so funny though. You know, I mean, there is a certain amount of brilliance to having a call sign, right?
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
So, anyway, so what you want to do is you want to carve out some time and give yourself the space to do it. And something about knowing your superpower, at least getting a sense of it, is you're like, oh, that's it. That just happened. That felt amazing. You know, that felt true. That felt completely authentic to me. Speaking it, you know, I love that you all have been doing that in your podcast, because when we speak who we are and we are authentic, it grows, it gains power. And that not only do people relate to us like that, but we relate to ourselves like that. We're like, you know what? That is who I am. And so that's one way to do it, is to talk about it, to express that that's who you are. I promise you, when I started doing this, I'm from rural Oklahoma. So when I would tell my friends from high school, listen, you know, I tune into people and do this, and you know what their response was? And like, they know. They already know.
Yeah.
So as much as we try, because I'm like literally from the buckle of the Bible Belt, and I was like, oh no, people are going to think I am horrible, and they're not, you know, they're not going to understand. And they all understood. They were like, Mary Beth, that's totally you. Like, absolutely.
Yep.
And so, you know, I think sometimes we pretend to be a certain way. Like Shane, you pretend to, okay, I'm going to take you all with me, when you're like, I'd really rather just get on the bullet train and go.
Don't tell anybody. You're giving away all my secrets.
I am. You're welcome.
But
Shane's already at the end of the podcast, by the way. We're catching up to him.
Right. He's like, yeah, I 10 years from now, here's what I'm going to be doing. And then Jason, you are like, it's okay to, you know, you need room to be like, I'm all over the place, you know,
Totally.
like, right? Because that is the brilliance of your mind. Shane needs to go fast. You need to be able to check out and be like you said, I'm throwing paint on the wall. I am drawing in the air. I don't care. You know, like, because you personally, when I see you as just an artist, but you are not attached to what medium it takes, which is very interesting. You know, you're not like, I'm a carver, I talk to wood, you know, like you're like all over, you know, and it's great, but it can be hard because it's not so defined. But you are not defined, and you need the room to express that. And the more you do it, the more confidence, the more facility you will have with your gift.
So good. I mean, that's exactly me to a T. Because sometimes I feel like I've got to fit this mold that everybody wants me to be, and
not sometimes,
all the time.
You can't get anything past Mary Beth, I'm telling you right now. So yeah, this really has truly been fascinating.
So fascinating.
certainly not the way, before we come on with all of our guests, we kind of have an idea of where it's going to go. And this one, I truly had no idea. Love the direction of this podcast. Truly appreciate the insight that you have given our listeners and us into us. So thank you so much for that, Mary Beth. Now, near the end of our podcast, we have what we call the double down dose.
Uh-oh.
You ready for this? It's
how much weirder can it get?
Yeah. 2 questions we love to ask everybody. We get totally different. So we love to talk about hope. That's part of our podcast name.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to us, but we love to ask the question to our guests: how would you define hope?
Oh gosh, for me, and this is absolutely essential. This is like the breath that I breathe. It's like there is, and when I say magic, I don't mean woo-woo magic, but just that wonderful spark of life. There's always that. Always, always, always. And it's never more than just, it's always right here, like always immediate, always accessible. And that for me is hope. It's like, there's always a spark of life. There's always something amazing and that's incredibly powerful and transforming always. Like, no matter what, I feel like I am a kid in a candy store. I'm all, ooh, hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Yes. Like it's like there's hot chocolate everywhere, like there's always something that is incredible, no matter what situation we're in. You know how it is. Sometimes you're like worried about something and all of a sudden you're like, I just have this incredible feeling of trust and happiness. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
It just comes.
Yep.
And we don't have to deserve it. We don't have to work for it. It is right here, just like our superpowers. They're right here.
Love that description.
Yeah.
The visual I had was that it's right in front of us. And sometimes all we have to do is reach our hand just a little bit. And that hope we can pull in. It's never going away. So I love the visual that you gave
me. It's never far away. Yeah. That's something that I realized is it's never like happiness and that feeling of incredible, like peace and connectedness. We don't, it's not at the end of the road. It's here. And you're right. I think most of what I get is I'm like, I say to people, just give yourself permission, like do reach out and grab it. It's okay. Like that's our job. That's really our job, is to be like, oh yes, I love that. I love that moment of, when Shane, you are hauling it through the universe, you love it. And Jason, you love it when you're like, oh,
so good.
That's so beautiful. It's so great.
It is so great. I love that. I do love that visual because we have this little stream out in front of our house, and I love just sitting there and watching these beautiful birds that come and take a bath in it or drink water out of it, and just like in awe of their beauty. And this really cool yellow bird that keeps coming around. He's got like a red on the side of his neck, and he's all yellow, but just this little bit of red. So I just love that. Anyway, you hit me spot on. It's kind of awesome how you were able to describe me. But to get to the second part of the double down dose, which is a question Shane and I love asking, and it's a very simple question, and it's this: what is your definition of love?
Oh, just total acceptance. And, I guess I would add one thing to that, is that no matter how sometimes we appear to others, people who love us see who we really are. Like that's how I look at, Shane, what is your essence? Or Flash, what's your essence? And Dreamer, what's your essence? Like, what is that? And when we can remember there's like this divine person, this divine entity, this spark in all of us, how could we would not love that? Is to look past like what it seems. I know when I met my husband, He's so funny. He would say all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? That doesn't match with who I know you are. And he goes, okay, if you'll just keep remembering that. Because sometimes I just say whatever. I'm like, good to know.
So good. Mary Beth, really, truly, thank you so much for this discussion. It has been so fun. So good to get to know Jason and myself a little bit more, or at least accepting that from an outside perspective, knowing that's who we are, but accepting like that really is who I am. I am Flash and Jason is Streamer. And so seriously, thank you so much for this discussion. For those of the listeners who want to reach out to you, we always like to give that avenue to those who want to reach out to you. What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So I'm at superpowerinc.org. And if you go to superpowerinc.com, you'll get this big power station in New Jersey. Which I think is hilarious. So you may need to do Superpower Inc. Mary Beth Robinson, and then you can find me. You can send me an email. You can sign up for newsletters. And also, if you do send me an email for people who have seen this podcast, just mention that, that you saw it here. And I'll do like a free, like 3-line, quick reading for you, and I'll do a discount on a reading. So
good.
So
Thank you.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
that's awesome.
I know, because like the best thing to do is to experience it, right? I mean,
yeah. I
can
think
say,
everybody
"Oh,
needs it, so they
about
need to get a hold of you.
Yeah, they really do. Again, thank you, Mary Beth, so much for this discussion. We have very much enjoyed our time with you.
You all are delightful. I mean, truly, it was really a pleasure to tune in with both of you, because I'm like, oh, wow. And it was super easy too.
It was fun. So this is Flash signing off.
Right. Napper out.
And Dreamer, I'm out in the ether. Just
Right.
call
You're
me if you
already
need
out.
me. I'm gone.